Hi, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the country. Thank you for joining us today. This is NPD and SIA's Retail Data 101 webinar series. This is related to the critical data and trends that we have in the industry and how to use them in your business. This is webinar number 2 in the series. So the first one we did was yesterday related to specifically Alpine equipment. And today's webinar is more focused on Alpine Touring and Nordic equipment. So this format is really meant to be the icebreaker for those of you that don't know how to get started with the data, and therefore you might be apprehensive or uncertain on where or how to begin, and what to do with the insights you find. So let me get started and tell you a little bit about me. I'm Laura Hills. I'm an analyst with NPD. For the specialty in outdoor and snow industries. I'm also a director of client development for NPD's Sports and Outdoor Division. So I work directly with SIA and several other industry leaders in the snow market to help them uncover and capitalize on those trends that are impacting our industry today. If you joined us for yesterday's webinar, this format is going to be very similar. So the upfront kind of framework is identical to yesterday. So about the first 10 or 12 slides are going to be what you saw and heard from me yesterday. So if you want to go and grab a cup of coffee or a snack and then come back in a few minutes, then we'll dive into the data, and each of the data examples specific to Alpine Touring equipment and Nordic will be different than what you saw yesterday. But so the agenda today, so as I said, it's the second in the series of 4. So today is Alpine Touring equipment and Nordic. Next week on Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll be doing snowboard equipment, and then soft goods and accessories on Wednesday. So this is really meant to be an educational extension of the industry trends webinars that you may have caught from Julia Day and I last week. And it's intended to walk you through the NPD data that's specific to your category. So for today, AT and Nordic, and then also outline some of the decisions that you should be making using this data. So the structure is really meant to illustrate simple baby steps of data analysis and to show you where and how to begin that journey. If you don't feel comfortable accessing and leveraging the data following these sessions, please certainly reach out to me or to SIA, and I'd be happy to be a further resource for you. So NPD and SIA have partnered, knowing that this series, knowing that especially in this critical time in retail, businesses need every tool that they have at hand to stay relevant in today's market. Some of the data showcased for you today is available to you if you're solely an SIA member and you're not participating in any further way with NPD. It's an ongoing benefit of your membership and has an incredible amount of value to it. There is some data in here that is not accessible, at the categorical level. It leverages brand and item level information. If you don't have access to that today and you want it or you're interested in it, my contact information will be given at the end, and you can certainly reach out to me and I'll make sure that you get connected to the right person. So for today's agenda, I'm going to tell you a little bit about NPD and where our data comes from. I'll make the case for why it's so imperative to pay attention to, and the various aspects of your business where you can apply it. I'll also take you through the most recent data presented on today's category. I've leveraged some of the slides that we used in the most recent review, but then I've also sprinkled in some new views of the data and suggestions on different aspects of your organization that could be taking it into account. And then I'll highlight for you other data sources that you get through your membership with SIA and suggest the opportunity to leverage them together for even greater insights and the most holistic view of the market. And then lastly, I'll show you what the reports look like report looks like that you should be accessing through your membership. I'll walk through a summary of what it includes in it and best ways to get value out of it. And then we'll save a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. Yesterday, we didn't have a whole lot of questions come through during the session. So again, if you're not comfortable asking live questions, you can always email them to SIA or to myself afterward, and we can certainly keep the conversation going. So for those of you that are new to the webinars and to NPD and you don't know much about us, we're truly a global organization. We operate in 19 countries. Our data, whether it's consumer or point of sale based, is considered the data of record by those industries that we track. We've been in business for 50 years and we work with the world's leading brands and retailers. And our heads aren't just in one space. We track business across several industries, both from the granular analysis that you're going to see on AT equipment and Nordic equipment today, as well as what's happening in beauty and automotive and several other industries. So what it really allows us to do is to look up and look across those industries and speak to the macro trends that are taking place from a total retail perspective. If you haven't been to NPD's website, I recommend you check it out. It's a wealth of information from our public press releases and studies. So even if you're not subscribing to the full extent of our data today, you can get some really great information on what's happening at total U.S. retail. And then specifically for our sports business at NPD, in addition to everything from the left of what's happening in the courts of baseball, basketball, and tennis to what's taking place in running. We also track all the way to the right that snow business from the bottom to the top of the mountain, and we really are able to give you the full perspective of what's happening in your industry. So why data? Why do we need it? And what makes us say that it's critical? So first and foremost, it's the unbiased input to your decision making. We make countless decisions in life and business based on our gut and our intuition, and that serves us really well, but data offers us the facts to justify what our feelings are around any of those decisions and the analytics that add weight to what our anecdotal stories are. So use this data to validate those gut feelings. It brings clarity and ensures your judgment is unclouded by outside factors. Secondly, data is the great equalizer. It levels that playing field and it offers everyone the opportunity for a competitive advantage. And then one point we hear all the time from buyers and commercial teams is that data, and particularly NPD data, offers one language at the buying selling table. So one language and also one version of the truth. It creates the foundation for more productive buying and selling conversations. And also what we're hearing is that more and more, particularly in our specialty-centric snow business, retailers not only appreciate educated sales reps, but they also have come to expect sales reps to come to the table equipped with data-backed recommendations for what direction the business should go in. And certainly this approach helps to build trust between business partners and then also within the organization itself. So no doubt COVID-19 has fast forwarded our retail timeline for change, and in today's fast changing retail landscape, manufacturers and retailers need to innovate and become even more savvy. So there's a myriad of ways you can leverage data in your business decisions and operations. This is just a few of the things that I've put up on the slide, and we'll give you more specific examples of that as we move through today's presentation. And then here's some of the common questions that we hear from both retailers and manufacturers on what we can do with the data and how we can specifically address them. So what is the size of my market? Is it growing or shrinking? Do I have the right distribution for my product? Is my channel strategy aligned with where the market growth and direction is headed? Is my category shifting towards value or premium offerings? My brand's growing. I know that from my internal sales, but am I gaining share of the market? Is the market growth outpacing my own brand growth? And therefore I'm kind of in the losing position, even though from where I'm sitting, it looks like I'm winning. Where should I prioritize my open to buy? So I know what's happening in the categories I'm in. Should I be looking into new categories? Is there opportunity that I'm missing? So these are just some of the business questions we can take the data into account for. So the very first and most macro analysis that answers the question of what is the total market sizing and trend what ultimately is the size of the prize, and is that prize growing or shrinking? In this instance, where does Alpine Touring equipment and where does Nordic equipment sit within the greater hard goods market? And what influence, if any, do we see it having on total market performance? So Alpine Touring equipment, this past season, it's the second from the bottom. It's a $47 million market, and it expressed 15% growth over last year in dollars sold. But even with the double-digit figure growth, because the category is relatively small in comparison to, say, Alpine or snowboard equipment, it doesn't really move the total equipment needle very much. And then similarly speaking, Nordic equipment is a $36 million market this past season. The market lost about $6 million in dollars sold, and it didn't adjust, the total market performance too heavily. So the next step down from market sizing and total market tracking of the industry is to analyze the size and performance of the individual channels of business within the industry. They're all very, very different, and they behave very differently. And certainly your channel strategy is different from one to the next. So here's how NPD segments the channels of business within the snow industry. We have Snow Chain on the far left. This is a full participating set of retailers, as well as the gray column there to the right of it. That represents the channel of retailers that we're projecting for. In the middle section, that's your snow specialty dealers. This is the largest channel within the industry. And this is just an example set of retailers as opposed to being, a full exhaustive list. And then on the right is also an example set of the retailers that feed into our snow internet channel. Not only is it important to, someone just asked or made a comment that, let me go back. Okay, so the channels of distribution. One of the notes on here is that there's a retailer listed that closed a year ago. Yes, one of the points that we make with the example set of retailers is that our data covers 3 years of business or 3 years trend. So oftentimes you'll see some businesses on here that might not currently be doing business in the market, but their sales are actually recognized within our historical data set. So there is impacts that you would see to the trends or to the market based on them being a participating retailer. So we do, clean this list up from season to season as we upgrade our data. Actually, so it gets cleaned up twice a year. Our data is being upgraded right now as we speak, and then it'll get upgraded again in February. So this list you will see change periodically, but we typically don't pull retailers off the list until they're no longer represented in the data. That's a great question and a common one. Okay, so not only is it important to monitor your channel size and performance at the total channel level, but then of course you also want to understand what your specific category performance is within those channels, whether it aligns or misaligns with the total channel direction, and then certainly what changes or opportunities that might represent. So what I've charted here for you is exactly that. So total channel performance alongside total equipment, and then the Alpine Touring and Nordic category performances within it. So on the left-hand side, you have it segmented by channel for snow specialty, then snow chain, and then snow internet, the size of the channels in descending order. And then the bar charts actually include 2 years of trend information. So the first percent change is 2 seasons ago, and then the second percent change was this past season and how it performed to the season prior. So looking at, so that's what you see looking at the label. So snow specialty overall fell 5% this last season. Total equipment grew 1% in the channel. Alpine Touring equipment grew substantially at 29%, while Nordic fell 17%. The category performance here are very much an example of the law of large numbers. So the percent changes are quite a bit different and drastic. And that's because the volumes are so much smaller than total equipment and of course the channel. However, all but Snow Internet, Alpine Touring outperformed the market the last 2 years. And when we look at the single month of March for Snow Internet, we'll see that trend actually reversed as we moved in. It could be reversing as we move into the 2021 season. So the natural next question off of this type of analysis is, what is the subclass performance within Alpine Touring equipment and Nordic equipment, and how does that compare to your own brand performance? Or rather your own store sell-through, to understand if you're either outperforming or underperforming the market, and then where you might need to shift resources in order to rectify that. So first, let me dig a little bit further into the channel distribution analysis. As I mentioned earlier, in today's market, everything is changing so rapidly. It's important not to take your eye off that ball. And what we saw, is important to point out that the trend reversal that happened in Snow Internet took place in March. Of course, the redirection of sales from brick and mortar to e-commerce occurred across all U.S. retail industries. But for the most part, those industries, e-commerce sales are still a growth sector. That's not the case for snow. So snow industry, for this past year, and particularly for hard goods, snow e-commerce growth had sort of stagnated. But what we saw in March was that, in the Snow Internet channel, winter snow sports equipment, it grew 13% in dollars sold. It grew 16% in units sold. And we recognize a negative 3% decline in average selling price across all of the categories. Most major categories saw a double-digit growth in dollars and units sold, but units trended faster than dollars due to the declines in average selling price. So specifically for Alpine Touring, the month of March in Snow Internet was a $2.7 million business. It was up 34% in dollars. It declined, it was up 45% in units, and it declined 8% in average selling price. And then Nordic equipment is a $600,000 business in March, the month of March for Snow Internet. It was up 39% in units, and also the same in dollars, and therefore that's because we had a flat average selling price. Now, NPD doesn't track snow business performance in the summer months. The volume just drops off so significantly in the month of April that we stopped tracking sales from April through July. So we've already begun tracking sales again for the 2021 snow season, beginning with August. August and September are delivered together, so we'll see the start of this month's tracking delivered in the very early part of November. So it'll be really important to watch and see what happens in August and September, because what we've seen from the rest of our industry tracking is that even as stores open back up, there was still a higher rate of use of the e-commerce channel. So folks across the country, as COVID and the pandemic continues, and there's still a risk out there, they've adopted online purchasing for a lot of categories that people weren't purchasing online before, and that has stayed high even as some people return to store business. So yeah, we'll definitely want to see what the internet channel is doing as we start to move into the new season.
Hey, Laura, we have a couple questions. If I could interrupt you really quickly to take a look
absolutely.
at those.
Okay, so the first is, does Telemark fall in AT or Nordic? Telemark is actually tracked separately, so it's not in Alpine Touring or Nordic. It's continuing to decline, and yes, it's a number to consider, but it is very, very small. Roger, if you want to shoot me an email after today's presentation, I'd be happy to talk through that with you in more detail. What geographical areas are represented here is a question that came in from Jill. So this is total US. So everything that you see so far in today's presentation is total US business. I do have a slide that breaks out the geography performance for snow specialty channel and total equipment across the US. That's something that's available to you as an SIA member to get at that data. You can actually get down to your specific category performance by geographical region within the snow specialty channel. So I'll show you how to get to that when we showcase the market report at the end of today's presentation. And then if you have any further questions, we can certainly delve into that deeper. So ask and you shall receive. So here's your regional analysis of total equipment. We get the regional analysis specifically reported for the snow specialty channel. So this is not indicative of any retailers that are feeding into our snow chain channel, and it's not indicative of any of the retailers that report within our snow internet channel. The only caveat to that is that there are several dealers. If you go back after today's presentation and you look at the deck and you review the retailers that are sitting within the internet channel, several of those do have brick and mortar businesses, and so their brick and mortar sales do get placed within the snow specialty channel tracking, and therefore they would be accounted within this regional view. So just a small caveat there. So what we see when we review the regional trend, this is certainly another layer of analysis that's important to take into account, specifically for manufacturers who sell in business across the US, and then certainly for your national retailers to review performance by region. You certainly have your sell-in data and your own store performance to take into account, but snow business in particular is so dependent on weather. And weather can vary so drastically by region that it's really important to look at this level to understand the whole story and not just the aggregate of the national level. Additionally, as you can see from this charting, that at the total hard goods level, the Western region is far and away the largest and really influences those national trends that we're talking about. The regional data is indicative of where the sale took place and not where the consumer lives. So where the store reported the sale happening. That was in response to a question that just popped in. So outside of the snow industry, just to give a little bit more detail and education on what is capable in terms of analytics in sales reporting and marketplace sell-through. NPD tracks business with most of their key retailers at a store level and on a weekly basis. So this regional level is just kind of the tip of the iceberg in terms of what NPD is capable of reporting in several other industries. So we can go down to the DMA level and actually talk to you about what's happening within key cities and performances of that. And that can get really powerful, particularly if you're a marketer and you want to understand the ROI of any of your advertising campaigns and promotions. We don't have that capability just yet within snow, but I do hope that we'll have that nearly in the future. Okay, now getting into the specific category examples. So Alpine Touring has been a growing category, by all measures for the last 2 years. So if we look across dollars, units, and average selling price, growth is up, in most cases double digits this season as well as for the past season. However, dollars have risen slightly, faster than units due to an increase in the average selling price. If you weren't playing in this category before and you're on this call, it's likely because you are now. While we saw that the volume in Alpine Touring is small compared to, say, alpine equipment or snowboard equipment, it's certainly one of the healthiest markets that we have within our snow industry and has been for the last several years. And then taking the category analysis down one level to the subclass segments, we see that only AT skis, which are one piece of AT equipment that doesn't necessarily need to be specific to the end use, have not grown consistently year over year for the last 2 years, as have AT bindings and AT boots. So in the 18-19 season, AT bindings, crushed it with 57% growth in dollars sold, followed by AT boots with 44% growth. This season, the bindings were still performing quite well, 7% growth in a relatively flat total equipment market. But it was AT boots that actually carried that exceptional growth from last season from the previous season into last season. And we even saw the AT skis began to share in the growth in, the 1920 season. So really healthy performance across all segments within this business. In the box to the right, you see that the breakout of the March internet performance for each segment and that bindings and boots both accelerated in growth in e-commerce when those brick and mortar stores were closed, or rather, when the store closures happened and the resorts closures happened. So this is a trend we very much expect to see continue as we move into the 2021 season. And then sometimes to continue the analysis of a trend and to understand really what decisions you should be making in your business off those trends, you want to access the brand and item level reporting. If you are not a participating retailer, as I said in NPD's panel, or you're a manufacturer or brand that doesn't access the full brand and item level reporting, reach out to me and I can put you in contact with the right people to talk about that. But one of the reasons it can be really important to analyze category trends down to the item level is that oftentimes, and particularly within hard goods categories, a new franchise launch can sometimes be the sole driver of what we're seeing category growth. So yesterday I was speaking to, Alpine equipment category trends in the first iteration of this webinar. And for example, the K2 Mindbender series that was new to the market this past season. And 3 of those styles or models rather accounted for 3 of the top 5 items, adding the most new dollars to the Alpine skis category. So really important to know what's happening at the item level so that when you see growth out of a segment, you can really dive deeper into it and see what's happening there. So, in the past 2 years, the Solomon, Atomic, and Armada versions of the Shift bindings, they've accounted for 72% of the category growth. So when ranking items on dollars sold, it's actually the exact same ranking for share of growth. And that doesn't always happen. But when a new entrant into a market is far and away contributing all of the growth, and that's when you see the rankings shake out that way. The remaining 28% of growth outside of Shift is shared in like 1 to 3% increments across 10 or so other items. So really the bulk of the business and action happening in bindings is coming from the 3 iterations of Shift. A question came in from someone in the audience as to whether or not you'll get a copy of this presentation. The recording will be available through SIA, so you'll be able to access that. And then yes, if you do want a PDF copy of the slides today, you can certainly reach out to me and I'm happy to share that with you. So looking at a different segment of the AT equipment performance and what you might need to know, to make assortment or demand planning decisions about your business is what's happening within AT boots. So a very different story than what I just told you in bindings. The item level story here is dramatically different. So when we look across the top selling items, it's the Technica 0G Tour Pro Boot is the one that garners the most share of growth of any item, and that's at 9%. And then the remaining 91% share of growth is actually spread across 40 other items within the category. So in this instance, it's much less imperative to assort any particular item in Alpine boots in order to capture the growth that's taking place there, as opposed to, within Alpine bindings, it's really important that you have one of those 3 styles or models of Shift within your assortment in order to capture the growth that's taking place. And then I have a few, examples of where, additional data can be applied when you're looking outside of your main category and what's happening in peripheral categories that it might be influencing. So one of those alongside AT equipment is backcountry accessories. And this category really shows standout performance. When we track the dollars sold and the percent growth across the last 4 seasons, we can see that the double-digit increases are not only great, but also pretty consistent. So 15% for this last season, but the 2 seasons prior to that were double-digit increases in the 20% range. Not charted here, but what I can tell you is that the units growth is not quite as high. So there is a little bit tiny influence happening from a growing average selling price that's taking place here. Certainly, if you're a retailer selling AT equipment, you're also assorting backcountry accessories in order to help ensure that those consumers are factoring in safety into their backcountry endeavors. And you also have the added benefit of add-on sales as well. And then one trend we saw and heard from March was the 53% jump in dollars sold in backcountry accessories, specifically for the month of March. This was certainly exaggerated in the internet channel due to store closures, but it really does follow the full season trends pretty consistently that we've been seeing, and also that I've charted out here, by each subclass segment within backcountry accessories, how the channel performance performed. And here it's not just Snow Internet that captured a lot of the growth in March. The businesses that remained open or were open ahead of store closures for specialty brick and mortar also captured some of this growth as well. So in skins, 30%, beacons, other backcountry accessories, and probes, specialty businesses were capturing some of that. So all segments in backcountry did exceptionally well in March, but we heard from several retailers that when those resort closures happened, everyone was certainly scrambling to get the gear to keep their season going. And those that were particularly new to the backcountry, they opted out of adding in safety equipment. For anyone who spends time in the backcountry, this was concerning and is also concerning to see it shake out in the data here too. So NPD reported for March that skins were the leading segment of backcountry accessories in both volume and growth. Beacons, shovels, and probes, while trending positive, they were not quite as high in growth rates despite having lower dollar volume categories. So, with the uncertainty around resort operations in the season ahead, this particular segment of the industry is getting certainly a lot of press and a lot of inquiries about what we expect to happen. And the expectation is that people will continue to be drawn to the backcountry, particularly for this upcoming season. It allows distance from crowds. It allows you to avoid any potential complications around reservations for passes or tickets or reduced lift capacity. But the hope is that everybody in the industry is going to do their part to put as much priority on staying safe in the backcountry, with the equipment that's with the equipment that's needed to get out there. So one of the most common questions asked is whether there's a macro shift in a category towards value or premium products, or trending towards or away from the most technical performance products available. This can shift, based on, participation levels. So people that are new to participating in snow sports may not be looking for, the most highly technical products that are available out there. And so that can certainly change, the trends that we're seeing. And an average selling price analysis can help uncover some of that. So this is especially true to understand for, product development, product placement, price and promotion strategy, as well as like wholesale sell-in and go-to-market strategies if you're a brand or manufacturer. So simply tracking the, category level or subclass level average selling price, ASP, over season over season, or by month can be very useful in identifying the macro shifts of the category, as well as, when the most discounting is occurring. So I've done this analysis for the Nordic equipment subclasses of skis, boots, poles, and bindings. and saw a noticeable trend in that all but Nordic skis have showed fairly consistent growth in average selling price season over season for the past 2 seasons. Nordic boots stand out as the most indicative of this. They have double-digit growth percent for the last 2 seasons. So I dove down a little bit deeper into Nordic boots and started looking at the dynamics of unit change and average selling price within this segment. So I have charted along the left the units sold in thousands for Nordic touring boots, Nordic race boots, Nordic backcountry boots, and then Nordic sport boots. And the chart in the middle, that's the units percent changed for what the sell-through was. And then all the way to the right is the average selling price. So what we saw for this is that the growth that's actually being driven is, or the growth in ASP is actually a function of the dynamics of what's happening with units growth within the different segments. So the Nordic race discipline, which has the highest average selling price of all the segments, is where the growth is really taking place within this segment. The Nordic sport discipline down at the bottom, it also saw a fairly high increase in average selling price. However, the base of that is the smallest of all segments, and the lower ASP that segment has actually didn't detract from the influence of the growth within the race business. So peeling back the layer of the trends that you see at the categorical level down to brand, down to subclass segment is really important. And then certainly getting down to brand and item can be even more telling of what the true industry trend is. So now that I've walked through some very basic examples of how to take the sell-through data, the marketplace data, and apply it to some of your business decisions, or to use it as a guiding light for where you should be going in the market, I want to talk about some of the other sources of data that you have from SIA. So as an SIA member, you, in addition to NPD top line market reports, you also have custom consumer research. You also have a winter participation study, and then you also have the wholesale sales and order study, which tells you that sell-in information ahead of what's NPD is going to tell you about sell-through. So what really gets the most power and the most actionable insights from data is when you take NPD's marketplace sell-through data and you marry it with the insights that you get from these other sources for a truly 360 holistic view of what's happening in the market and what it means for your business. And then if you haven't seen the monthly market report before, so you're new to data, you're not sure what to do with it, you're not sure how to start leveraging it or where to go to get it, I'm going to pull up the report now and I'm going to walk you through what it includes. So bear with me just a moment. Okay, Maggie, ping me if you're not seeing the screen. So here we have the U.S. Snow Industry Retail Market Report. It says this was updated in May of 2020. The reason for that is that NPD tracks snow data August through March, and then that March data month is produced and published to the industry in May. So that's why the date of this one says May 2020. We actually only track snow business August through May. August through March. So this report is provided actually 7 times a year. August and September data is published together as one data month, or rather one instance that kicks off the season tracking. And then you can look at, and then we publish it every month through the season, through the month of March. So here we have data through the month of March. What this report offers is the ability to look at all of the categories that are tracked within the snow industry, The components that we use for the measures are dollars sold, units sold, and average selling price. When this report delivers each month, so for Alpine Touring and for Nordic, this is going to be your basic report that you're going to get and that you're going to leverage. For some of the other categories, such as Alpine equipment, if you play there, or snowboard equipment, if you play there, there are several additional supplemental reports that dive a little bit deeper and get a little bit more granular in analysis. But for some of the smaller categories, this is the nuts and bolts that you're going to go after in terms of, you know, your analysis for what's happening in the industry. This report delivers with a short 10 to 15 minute webinar that I provide. It's a quick summary of the components of the report. I'll talk about, you know, what it includes, our methodology. I'll go over the retailers by channel the way that I did today, and the definitions of, you know, why we put one retailer where. But then it also has a couple resource tabs, your category hierarchy, and then also your category definitions. And then it gets into the actual data tabs of the report. So it offers a current period view as well as a season to date view. So for this report, which is, you know, March 2020 data, this gives the month of March performance, and then it also gives the full season performance. So everything that's happened from August of 2019 through March of 2020. Those two views are offered, by gender, and then also for the specialty retailer channel, we also offer those views by region. So if you want to see how your category performed by region, you can expand it out. For Roger, here's telemark equipment. So you can see that that's tracked separately from everything else. But within winter sports equipment, you can see, for example, the Alpine Touring equipment and how it performed by each region. And then you can also, look at, you know, the current period by region or season to date. So that's kind of the nitty gritty of the report. Let me get back to the presentation. If anybody has any questions on that report, the basic components of it or ways to use it, I'm happy, you know, to talk with you at length about it. Where you're going to find that within your portal is by going to snowsports.org. You can log into your member portal, and then you'll see this Insights tab here is where you go to access your NPD data. So if you scroll down, you can see that NPD top line sales reports are included here. But again, as I mentioned, you know, there's a wealth of other data and information provided in this same section that you could certainly leverage in conjunction with it. If there's no other more live questions today, then please know that you can certainly, reach out to me following today's session, and I'm happy to talk through, any questions that you might have. Let me give you my contact information. So my email is laura.hills@npd.com. Industry and intelligence at SIA.com. If I'm not mistaken, Maggie is also your email address. So if they have questions, you know, specific to SIA or to the portal, they can reach out to you there as well.
Absolutely. Well, Laura, I will just give it another second, but I know people have been asking questions throughout, so we might not have any more coming in at the end, which is totally fine. Thank you for all your expertise. I know that I learned today, as I always do, listening to you. And just to echo what Laura said, that if you do need anything, don't hesitate to either reach out to her at NPD or any of us at SIA, and we can definitely help you out. We have 2 more of these sessions coming up next week, so if you're looking to learn more, we'll see you there. Otherwise, look forward to seeing you online shortly. Take care.
Thanks, Maggie. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.